Hi, I'm Bob Knote, and on this episode of the Camp Chaos Chronicles, I'm going to show you how to rebuild this Saginaw power steering pump, the kind that you'd find on your Jaguar XJS. And the truth is that next to changing tires, this is about as easy a repair as you're going to do. Dang it. So this is the Saginaw pump that you more than likely have in your Jaguar XJS. And the good news here is that this is on a lot of American cars. Like for example, if you had a Chevy Caprice of the same year, this is going to be a 1987. You'd see, with the possible exception of the pulleys and the mounts, you would see exactly the same pump here. What we're going to do is we're going to pull this thing apart. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take this drive pulley off, which is nothing more than banging off 3 5/16 bolts. Now it's a mild press fit, not much, but you can remove it by lightly tapping the pulley in most cases. Now this is cast iron. You got to be careful. You don't want to be banging right on the edge. You want to be banging flat, because they're not making these anymore. You're gonna have to find a used one someplace if you break it. Okay, and yeah, we're gonna have to tap that off. There we go. All right. So now we've got the two mounting brackets, which again are they're really the only things that separate this from the one you'd find on your Chevrolet of the same year. And these are held on by 7/16 bolts, I believe. Sure to keep track of the bolts and washers and where they go. And there you are. As long as we're on this side right here, what we're going to do is we're going to remove this hub that holds the pulley on. And in order to do that, you got to have a tool that looks like this. Now this is going to go on like this, and it's going to push against the hub itself, but you got to have these things right here, these little shells that have a raised area on the bottom edge, which are going to fit in this groove that you see right here. So let's go ahead and do that. You have to thread this out a little bit. Okay, so that's locked in that groove. You then take this sleeve and put it around the outside, and then you can tighten it up. I hate using impacts on tools like this, but I'm going to have to. This is really tight. Now, what I've done in the past, and there's plenty in the threads here, is put anti-seize in here so that the bolt doesn't gouge out the inside of the nut. So it looks like it's ready to come apart. However, There's a couple things in the back here, including this fitting. By the way, when you remove this fitting, there's a little spool that fits underneath there that you want to be, in fact, there's a spring and a spool under there. That will probably be included in your rebuild cartridge, but we'll set that aside. And then okay, so at this point we have everything removed that we need to extract this cartridge from this canister. Now, it's a little bit difficult to get these out sometimes because they've been together for the past 40 years or so, and this cartridge needs to come out this way toward the camera, and there's an O-ring around there, and you can see there's all sorts of stuff in between the two. So it's going to take some effort to get this apart. Now, if you go to some YouTube channels, you will see, oh, that got bent a little bit at some time. Okay. Some YouTube channels you'll see, in fact, most of them will say, put these back in and then take a rubber mallet and tap it. But what I like to do is take a punch that's smaller than the minor diameter of the bolt. Make sure it goes all the way to the bottom of the hole. And it's starting to move already. And then just go from one side to the other. Until it decides it's time to give up. Which isn't yet. There we go. You can see what we were fighting there. Not only the O-ring, but also rust and dirt and so forth. So now what we want to do is compare the two to be assured that they're the same unit. And outside, and inside, they appear to be the same thing. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to take all of these parts over to the parts washer and get them all cleaned up prior to reassembly. So here's the pump ready to go together. You've got the main body, pulley, the brackets for mounting it, the hub that the pulley mounts to, the new pump. All the bolts have been cleaned and painted. Obviously, you don't need to do all that. That extends the duration of the project significantly, but what the heck, it's going on a pretty good engine. So, and then also we've got the seals here, all of which you're not going to be using. These, there are different thicknesses of these, depending on what pump you have, and it's pretty easy to figure out what's what. So, in addition to that, we've got the puller here. How do we do this? Well, there's some stuff we have to determine first. So these are the two pumps. This is the old one, and this is the new one. And as you can see, they both look pretty much identical. There are some differences, though. These are the two fittings that fit in the holes on the two pumps. And this is the old one, this is the new one. Now, as far as the measurements of the diameter and the thread and so forth, and also the depth of the various features, the diameter of the output and also the threads, On the inside and the two grooves and so forth, they're the same. However, if you look at those two holes there, this one is a little bigger than that one. And if you look on the inside, you can see that the hole down the middle is different. I don't know if that's a big deal, but that being the case, I'm going to put the old one in and return this one with the core. Now, if you look here, you can see that this O-ring has been flattened out over time. I'm going to replace it with the O-ring on the new one. And you just need to make sure that you get it in the second groove, or the one next to the hex on the outside of it. This one right here, I believe, yeah, you got a hole there that you don't want to cover up. So that groove is basically to provide an avenue to get fluid either in or out of that hole. So we're going to swap those over. The other thing is that you've got these seals that go around not only the two bolts that go from the inside of the pump to the outside to seal them, but also around here. And you got two thicknesses of these depending on the pump. This is the thick one. The way you determine that is you stick it in, and if it just barely sticks out over the top, that's the one you need, because that'll compress in between the canister and the pump. If we go with the skinny one, like that, you can see that it doesn't come out past the top of the casting, and that would not seal. So that's the only real important thing you got to be careful of here. The rest of this goes together pretty easy. Oh, that didn't have to happen. Well, anyway, the spool came out. Make sure that the spring is still in there and just drop it back in. And not only did the spool come out, but we got a lot of oil. This was going to be a drip-free morning here. Never works out that way. But anyway, we're ready to put this together. Before we put this together, let me just say that you could actually do this cheaper than the way I did it. First of all, this was $103. It's the complete pump, rebuilt, ready to go into your canister. There's a $40 core charge that I'll get back when I bring this back to Advanced Auto. So $65 is what the cost will be, not including the paint and a little grease and so forth. You could actually do this cheaper. You could pull this out, and the actual pump itself, it's a multi-vane type of a pump with seals and so forth. And it would be a fairly simple thing to do, but it's going to take a lot more time. And I don't have that kind of time in a number of ways. But at any rate, let's get this thing together. So what you see here is my fabled green sticky John Deere cornhead grease left over from my agrarian days. I'm going to take a little of that and stick that in each one of these holes here. That is going to take a seal because I don't want those seals to be moving around. While I'm sticking this in the canister. And again, make sure that these are the thick, well, in my case, it's the thick ones, so that they will compress lightly against the canister. And you put those in. And also, you take a little of this grease and you don't need to have a lot of it, you just need to lubricate. You could use power steering fluid for the same reason. You don't need a lot of this stuff. You don't need to gunk everything up. how much fluid was in this pump. Anyway, spin it around and spread it evenly. I'm going to do the same thing to the inside of the canister as well. Not a whole lot, just a thin film. You just need to lubricate it lightly. We are now in a position where we can insert the pump. Whoops. Made a little mistake here. We got a little plug in there that needs to come out. That would have been unfortunate. Okay, so we got all those plugs out of it now. And what we're going to do is we're going to eyeball the situation and make sure that we are generally putting this thing together, clocking it properly. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use these two screws and get it down close enough. Okay. We're going to start tapping lightly with a soft hammer to begin to drive this, and it's going. All right, so we can then install this before we get it all the way in there. And spin these down as we go. It's important to keep these things engaged in the process here. Otherwise, you got to take it apart, which is not an awful job. We've already done it once. We are well and truly in there. There's only one thing left to do here, and that is to install, well, actually two things. Install this hub, and then install the pulley. What we're going to do here with the hub is just put a little bit of grease on the shaft just to grease the skids, as it were. And then we're going to just lightly tap that hub in place. Then we've got this puller, or pusher rather. Basically, it's a bolt that fits inside this central hub here with a bearing on it. This is going to thread inside of the hub. There you go. Okay, then we got to have a couple of wrenches here. First of all, we thread this down until it seats. We hold on to this with one wrench and then turn with another. If we just try to turn this, I've never actually tried that, but I doubt that it would work. So you select your two wrenches. In this case, it's a 22 millimeter and a 16 millimeter, and then you just start turning. And you keep turning until it stops, which will be flush. The hub will be flush with the end of the shaft. And then you reverse the process to extract the tool. To install the pulley, it's helpful to get some longer screws or bolts. In this case, it's 5/16 National Fine, and use these. Actually, one would probably do it in order to get the pulley clocked properly when you install it. Otherwise, if it's not right on the nose, which it's easy to not do, then you got to knock it off again. And who's got that kind of time? Well, there it is on the engine, ready to go to work. And by the way, this engine is the one that's going into Old Tex this spring with the manual transmission conversion that we're currently working on. From season 2 of the Camp Chaos Chronicles, you may remember the $500 overhaul challenge engine. Well, it was the $100 challenge, but that went horribly wrong. We spun that one to death trying to get it started because Old Tex had some electrical issues. So it's going to be interesting to see how a number of things work. First of all, this engine, the manual transmission conversion, things are starting to pick up around here. So if you like these videos, like, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment down below so we know we can do better. And we'll see you the next time on the Camp Chaos Chronicles.